Hi folks, thanks for joining us this evening at Via Sponsorship 2020, the first or the third of our webinar series. We'll just give it a few more minutes, couple more minutes as people are joining. I can see the numbers rocking up as we speak. So just give people a little bit more time just to join in, and we'll get back to you if we give it just another couple of minutes, please. Good afternoon, folks, and welcome along to webinar 3 of Via Sponsorship. Delighted you could all make it. A very good attendance list once again, building certainly on our previous 2 events. So we're here to talk about sponsorship and the value that it has within the sport industry, which has become fairly evident during the COVID period that sport has been under a lot of scrutiny. The financial difficulties that lockdown has created around it, and all of the social distancing issues with attendances and stadium, etc. We've got a fantastic group of speakers here today. We'll be starting off with Luca Rizzotti, who is currently based over in Milan in Italy, who is with Persico Marine, the America's Cup foiling business, and Luna Rossa Prada, and also the owner of Foiling Week, which is an event that GRM have been involved in, taking place in Lake Garda in Italy in September. And that was a highly successful event. We'll then move on to Gordon Kaye, who is the Head of Business Development for Celtic Football Club, certainly one of Scotland's, if not the United Kingdom's, most successful football clubs. And Gordon will be talking about the business side of Celtic Football Club and sponsorship, and how that impacts on sport as well. And then we'll be going on to Alex Smith. Alex is the commercial director at Clipper Ventures PLC, very interesting company with various sponsorship platforms, how they integrate, how they make it work, the whole concept of Clipper Ventures, which is probably the only profitable yacht racing business in the world. And it's set up by Sir Robin Knox-Johnston and William Ward, the owners, but Alex will run us through sponsorship, the commercial side of it, and how they are very creative in their approach to the whole concept of commercial sport. So that leaves me without further ado, and with no translator necessary. He actually speaks better English than I do. So I'd like to pass you on now to Luca Rizzotti. Luca, would you like to talk us through your presentation on Foiling Week?
Hi, Gordon, and thanks for inviting me to the Via Sponsorship conference. This year we had our 10th Foiling Week. We started the event in 2013, but I think it's probably good if I share a quick presentation. Hopefully it will take like 10 minutes to show what it is about to the people that is listening, if you are okay with that.
Absolutely. There you go.
Okay. So sharing. Gordon, can you confirm you see the presentation?
Absolutely. It's
okay. Okay, so Foiling Week is an event that is made to unite the sailors, designers, and builders of foiling boats. Foiling is quite an old, let's say, technology. It was developed in the US and UK in the late 1800s, and the first ever, let's say, foiling machine that was self-powered was made by an Italian, actually, Enrico Forlanini in 1906 with a motor-powered foiling boat, which is basically the equivalent of the Wright brothers of foiling. It took basically 90 years of development and reaching a production capacity for materials and composites to be light enough so that sailing boats could be sailed around the coast competently and let's say win races because of the technology they were using. It was basically a rarified word in 2013 when we started. And the purpose was to put together a number of people that never met before. On the left, you can see Tom Spear. Tom was the designer of the Oracle Wing in the 2013 campaign when they had the very large trimaran that won the America's Cup. And the guy sitting on the ground, very relaxed, is the designer of the Mott. The International Mott is basically the first boat that proved that foiling is possible around the race course, winning races, which is the little tiny boat that you just see behind the two guys. So what we did was we connected all of these people first. They were basically pen friends before we made this event where they could actually meet. From then on, what we did is we started organizing racing, and over time we have become the world's largest multi-class foiling race. We had foiling weeks in many places around the globe. Garda is the one place where it was born, and we do that every year, but we have been to Sydney in Australia, we have been to Newport in Rhode Island, Miami, and we would have been, let's say, in Auckland if COVID wasn't an issue with moving down to New Zealand. We added trials because we felt that it was important for people to experience foiling. And we had, that was from year one, but also we started women and children dedicated trials since 2016. The scope of the dedicated trials is not, of course, to do something special for women as if they need any special care or need. It's more, and it's actually specifically to say you can do it. By saying that we had women trials, we had an increase of 80% of women coming to the trials, while before they sort of thought that it was kind of a men's sport. But we had many girls and children trying foiling boats ever since. We introduced courses during the event so that people could learn the basics of foiling. And we did that in cooperation with the Andrew Simpson Sailing Foundation, which is a UK charity that develops foiling schools around the world. We also have Olympic level coaching for the participants at the races. So we basically have different levels of interactions depending on the type of people that come at the event, whether they are beginners, intermediate, or proficient racers. We have the possibility of having something organized for them. We have the forum. The forum is one of the key important parts of the event. Over 500 speakers have participated to Foiling Week forums in the last 10 events. We basically had everyone from every America's Cup team, Volvo Ocean Race, Van Globe, and any designer and manufacturer or sailor that is, let's say, relevant in the foiling world. We had, I think, over 50 projects that were launched first at Foiling Week. And of these, I think about 10 became boats that were launched again at Foiling Week for the first time. We organize the Foiling Awards, which is, let's say, the Oscars of foiling. So every year we recognize the best performance of the foiling community in a number of topics, such as best foiling sailor, best foiling project, best foiling boat of the year, and so on, best innovation, best sustainability, of course, everything related to foiling. And that's a specific event that we do normally around February in Milan. One thing that was clear was that we had to be present all the time on socials to keep continuity with the community that we were connecting. So we have, I would say, quite a high reach over the year, not just with, of course, there is a peak during the events, but our average monthly users are 250,000, and they're all organic, zero paid. That's because we strongly believe that only organic is true growth. The rest is, let's say, Facebook fakes that at the end are not cooperative in the use of the platform. Aside from the events, we have launched a number of initiatives that are ongoing during the year. One is the world first medical research on foiling injuries, because of course, being a sort of an extreme sport in sailing, it has a different and new type of injuries occurring, and we want to do our best to prevent them. We have launched a competition for university students of naval architecture and engineering to design, produce, and race a sustainable international moth class boat. You see here an example made of bamboo, and we do that in cooperation with 11th Hour Racing, which is quite a big sponsor in the world of sailing. We have launched a competition for professional designers to design an electric foiling multi-purpose boat, and we did that in cooperation with Gurit, which is one of the largest carbon fiber manufacturers, and Torqeedo, which is, I would say, the most important electric engine manufacturer for boats. This is a project we are particularly proud of, which is still in funding phase, which is the world first disabled sailor foiling boat, which we have launched together with Guillaume Verdier, which is the designers of the foils for Emirates Team New Zealand, and a huge number of winning yachts in the foiling world. And Persico Marine, which is the builder of Luna Rossa, that will build the boats. We have done a petition in Lake Garda, taking care of, let's say, our own shores, to ban single-use plastic from the lake, and the petition was successful. And this has become basically, let's say, local law after this petition. So we are, of course, quite happy with this result. But I think it's now time to see, and Gordon, please tell me and confirm if audio is working, otherwise I will talk over it.
Working fine, Luca.
This is my third time at the Foiling Week, and we always look forward to coming back because there's a really great mix of people. You've got people working on their own home-built projects that are always innovative in their own specific way. You've got different professionals from different parts of the industry, and you've got regattas going on at the same time. You can see real boats and look at all the details, you know, on the moths and the different foiling catamarans and things.
As always, it's a great event. A lot of different boats, very interesting foiling arrangements, and it's great. As always, you learn a lot just by being here.
An event which is becoming the event for every foiling boat or catamaran. We are present with 3 catamarans, the Easy to Fly.
I wanted to make it available to more racers.
It was a good terrifying, like a good, bad terrifying mixed together to make terrifying.
We had a discussion in Miami about trying to help the upcoming sailors, the beginners and the intermediates, and came up with a plan to try and do a day's coaching here. And for me, it felt really rewarding.
The Andrew Simpson Water Sports Centre Lake Garda was very proud to work with Foiling Week this year to help make foiling more accessible to the masses by delivering foil training and learn to fly courses. We put over 30 people on the water, and we had so much great feedback from sailors who loved the experience of flying above the water for the first time.
We're here to discover more techniques and stuff, but we never imagined that there were going to be all these big names from the America's Cups and all the people to see how they work on their boat.
1. To provide foiling event safety guidelines. 2. To guide the development of specific protective equipment. And 3rd, to understand how to improve boat design in order to avoid man-to-boat injuries.
Absolutely fantastic that able and disabled-bodied sailors can experience foiling at its absolute utmost level. The project is absolutely a world first.
Foiling Sumoth is a student competition open to all universities and schools worldwide. The idea of the competition is to challenge the students into designing, building, and sailing their own concepts.
We have a responsibility to explain things to the kids, to the adults, to everyone, because people are just looking at us. Thanks to the boat, we can just bring message and just try to be an example for others. It's really important. So we have this responsibility, and I just hope to use it in a good way to try to fight against plastic.
It felt very free, and it felt like nothing was around me, and it felt really great.
Okay, so we move to the next slide. So this was basically what we have done so far. And next, what we are doing is we are launching the Foiling Hall of Fame, which is going together as an event basically the night before the Foiling Awards in Milan next year. Then we are taking a step further on Lake Garda by doing a special project to electrify water transportation, which means every coach boat in yacht clubs and every local transportation is going to be turned electric in Lake Garda in cooperation with a number of foundations and European funds. And this is going to be quite a huge project. And then the next thing important for us is we are going to connect the foiling community with the technology and the composites industry by partnerships that we have with a number of, let's say, entities I cannot disclose at the moment, but this will happen. And more or less, that's it for the presentation. So I will stop sharing my screen. Now we go back to myself. Gordon, let me know if you have any question. Of course, we can also talk about the specific of this year.
Luca, thank you very much, Luca, for that presentation. Absolutely first class. And of course, I don't know if you can see me here, but I'm actually wearing my sponsored Foiling Week t-shirt that you created a great deal of value trying to wrestle it out of my hands as we walked out.
No, I only see your picture, just for your information.
Right.
Now I can see you.
Now you can see me. I'm wearing my Foiling Week t-shirt that you kindly tried to drag out my hands as we skipped out. So Foiling Week, an incredible concept, because people think of Foiling Week as, on the water at whatever time the wind blows in the morning, and then off the water when the wind stops blowing, or 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and it finished as a race. But you put together talks from specialists, architects, designers, universities. You had education taking place. Now, obviously, the event is absolutely full. It's a huge economic driver for the Lake Garda region as well. But this year with COVID-19, how did you deal with some of the issues that faced everybody in the UK, which you overcame? And in actual fact, in September, and we were fortunate enough to be part of the event, we clearly saw that you had a phenomenal event, total engagement. How did you go about dealing with COVID-19 and overcome these issues that everybody's falling over and allowing to affect their events?
Well, what happened is that last year we had a record year in terms of numbers. We had over 200 entries at the event. That meant that the club where we ran the event, Malcesine, where you have been, was totally full. And we decided that it was basically too much to run the event from only one club. So we started working with 2 more clubs in the vicinity, so we could spread more boats and people around different clubs. This was the original plan. Then COVID came, and what happened was that we had a lower number of boats compared to 2019, of course, this year, but we had them spread over 3 clubs instead of 1. So there was less boats and they were spread over a bigger area. So we could keep the distancing that was required by the law. Plus, we also turned the forum, which is normally attended by like 100 people in a closed room, of course, into an online forum, which was in the plan anyway, even though we wanted to keep the public and make it online at the same time. So what we did is we basically shut the public out and we just concentrated on the online participation. We used a platform called StreamYard, which is very useful to combine all your social channels into one, because basically you can go live contemporarily on your Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and other social accounts. We had a combined reach in the thousands. So we certainly multiplied the number of people that could see our talks. At the same time, this was also a good opportunity to get people that is normally not easy to get because of geographical distance. We have lots of people coming from our event from, let's say, Team New Zealand, from Emirates Team New Zealand, the America's Cup team, but they normally come, let's say, every year or 2 because of the distance. It's a bit complicated for them. Having an online presentation meant that they could be there basically, but without having to travel 10,000 miles or 20,000 miles all the way to Lake Garda. Even, of course, there is a benefit in coming to Garda and being there and having a coffee together, or a glass or a spritz in a bar with all the people. And we know that the social part of events is key, but we managed to sort of let the community feel that there was the possibility of staying together anyway.
The other interesting point about your event, and it's abundantly clear in the video there, that you have very, very green credentials and the sponsors around it. So not only do you have brands like Gurit and Torqeedo. Torqeedo, by the way, are probably the world's leading electrification of marine craft, based in Italy. And you have Germany.
It's a German company.
German company. So you have them all there. And that is, how is that adding gravitas to your event, having these green credentials in comparison to maybe not having them?
Well, for us, it has been, I think one important thing is that your values need to be true. So you really need to care about sustainability, and we did that from year one. Like from the very first foiling week, we were plastic free, and then we brought that into the club, and then from the club we brought that into the city, and then from the city into the lake with the petition that successfully managed to get the ban on single-use plastic. So once people see that you mean what you say, I think it is easier to get companies on board that share your values. And Torqeedo certainly share the value of having a greener possibility of traveling over water by having electric engines instead of 4 strokes.
Great. Luca, very interesting. I'm gonna leave it until the very end to let some of the participants who are watching ask further questions. So please, if you don't mind, stay online with us over there in Italy. How is the weather over there, by the way? Is it gorgeous like it is here in Scotland?
Well, it's blue skies, but since we are in lockdown, I almost prefer not to know what's outside.
Well, so just to let you know, folks, we would like you to ask some questions, the participants here. Don't be frightened. There's a Q&A button at the bottom. And this, we're going to be bringing on Gordon Kaye from Celtic Football Club in a couple of minutes. So I'm keeping the theme slightly on football. So we do have a signed book here from Jamie Carragher, and we're going to send this book out to the most appropriate sponsorship question coming from our participants on here. So we have a signed book by Jamie, and we're trying to keep it politically correct as well. Liverpool, of course, Football Club. And next week, our book that's going to be hopefully signed will be Andy Robertson, and we wish him the best of luck on Thursday night when he's playing up here in that very important match. But it leaves me on that football topic to ask Gordon Kaye, if Gordon Kaye from Celtic Football Club would come on and give his presentation on sponsorship and Celtic Football Club. Now, Gordon is basically, so we've just had Luca from Milan, Gordon originally from Dublin. He relocated his family over from Dublin to join Celtic Football Club. And he looks after Celtic's sponsorship platform and their commercial platform within the Celtic Football Club. He's formerly been a non-exec director of Netball Scotland, so he knows his way around Scottish sport in a big way. And he's a qualified psychotherapist, I'm led to believe, Gordon. So over to you, Gordon.
Yeah, that's just so I can cope with my own crazy thoughts. I thought I'd go and get a degree in psychotherapy a few years, and it's helped. It's helped a lot. Good evening, everybody. I guess I'm going to run through a presentation in and around some of the impact of COVID and how we at Celtic have coped and changed and moved over the last number of months. So before I pop the presentation on the screen. I guess it's to just frame it. You know, if you go back to when COVID really kicked off, you have to look at what was the big impact on Celtic Football Club, and as everybody knows, it was no games. There were no matches in the stadium, which means we had no fans coming to games. We had restricted access to our players because they were self-isolating at home, like everybody during full lockdown. You know, so access to content was difficult. Getting a signed jersey became literally impossible, because how do you get one jersey around to, 28, 38 different homes and get that signed in a COVID safe manner? So all of the things that you would expect my department to deliver became challenging, and we had to look at how we overcome those things. You then look and say, well, how did we do that? Well, you just have to be dynamic and you have to be creative. So we looked at engaging with the players when they were at home and creating a different type of content that we could share both with the fans and with our partners. We obviously consulted with our partners to understand at that time what is important to them. There's a time and a place for everything, and during a global pandemic, maybe some brands would have figured advertising is not right for them at that point in time, but they're planning for when things change. And so my team worked with our partners to try and create a different type of asset that we've never really done before in terms of content, and ones that I think will become normal over time. So I guess when we're now, the next phase of that for Celtic was, well, football came back. We're back playing games, but we still don't have fans. So we're kind of in the middle of this pandemic, I guess. And there are some things that are good about that from a engagement point of view for sponsors. There are more games on TV than ever, and not just Celtic games. You can wake up on a Saturday morning, and before you go to bed on a Sunday evening, you can watch multiple sports events. You can watch 6 or 7 football games. There's a huge amount of content now that wouldn't have been there normally on a Saturday and a Sunday. And there's been a lifting in terms of, well, not a lifting, but we've learned more about COVID and the kind of restrictions. So we now have better access to our players. We can get stuff signed. We can produce content. And ultimately now we're in a position where we can work with our sponsors and plan around specific content, specific access that maybe we couldn't have done in the early stages of the pandemic. I guess, it's not just Celtic that have kind of created additional content and a different approach. We look to the likes of across the industry. You look at what F1 have moved very quickly to become a real digital first rights holder, and a very big shift, and they did that very quickly. If you compare it to how they were under Bernie, I guess it's a very different proposition to what they're bringing to the fan base in terms of content and ultimately to the sponsors as well. You look at what they did with the Champions League, a competitor brand to one of our main sponsors. So I won't mention them, but they created a digital launch party and streamed it live on YouTube around the Champions League. Again, something that we did when we received the title for 9 in a row. We had a 9 in a row party, which across our digital team, we created how the league was one piece. We created a live and interactive celebration, which was broadcast across YouTube and Facebook, where we had player interviews. We had competitions with fans, dress up, and I think between the two events associated with the league victory, we had over 330,000 people engage on that day, which was a celebration, whereas normally you'd see that celebration as confined to the 60,000 people in Celtic Park and the trophy lift and everything else that goes with it. So while we would all and all the fans would have preferred to have that done on the pitch, the change and the approach maybe opens things up a little bit more to sponsors. So I've a really short presentation to go through some of the activations that we've done over. So I'm going to try and share my screen. If you give me 2 seconds. Okay, so unless someone tells me otherwise, I'm going to assume that that's open. You can see it okay. So rethinking activation. during lockdown, as I said, a lot of challenge, few activities going on in the world of sports where people can actually place a bet. Dafabet took a slightly different approach and said, look, we want to give back to the fans. We want to be able to, give the fans something that they're really interested in. So during those discussions, we talked about what could we do, and due to the very good relationship we have with our sponsors and our sponsor, having become kind of pals with Scott Brown over the year, we talked to Scott and said, look, what would work for you? And what about Norwich? He's pals with Grant Hanley down in Norwich, and we created an event specifically for our sponsors, where we could bring together an interview with Scott Brown and Grant Hanley, and it was phenomenal. The guys were so comfortable with each other. I guess the relationship through the years in the Scottish national team. I know Grant is in the squad for the big game on Thursday, so again, just something that we probably would have never done in terms of that type of event, if COVID hadn't kicked in, and if we weren't kind of scrambling for ideas and concepts to be able to create new activity. And that Captain Call was hugely successful, highly engaged, and beneficial for both our partner, but also created a really good relationship between ourselves and Norwich. And we're actively talking about, maybe having a friendly with the two teams, and how can we, when things get back to normal, how can we build on that relationship? So again, just a prime example of something that came out of a change and having to work in a different way. We have an events department at Celtic, so it's not just football. We have weddings take place at Celtic Park, corporate events take place at Celtic Park, and we had one couple who, unfortunately, Alistair and Christine, their big day was planned to be at Celtic Park, and it was cancelled due to COVID. So we used that opportunity to create an event where we got Scott Brown to give them a call. We disguised it as a bit of a cover up, and to talk about what's going to happen with their deposit and all that kind of good stuff. And again, a really fantastic, authentic piece of content where you're surprising a Celtic fan, you're engaging with the brand as well in terms of the sponsor, and again, the sponsor not looking for anything out of it other than trying to give back to the fans. So another type of piece of content that we did in conjunction with Dafabet. A slide is struggling on my side, but another event was teammates. We had previously done this in the past, and as you can see on the bottom image, you have Scott and Callum in the dressing room, and they're answering questions and so on. So again, just taking the opportunity to take an existing piece of content, something that we do on a regular basis, and just getting the players involved so we can do home video calls, engaging, so we can continue to deliver on expectations for our partners. Again, just using the likes of Skype and so on. Something slightly different for our partner Magners. Obviously, a big part for Magners is that people come to the stadium, they enjoy a beer, they have a really nice time. That experiential piece, which is so valuable for brands, is now missing. Together with Magners, we pulled together a gift pack that we sent out to a number of corporate clients, ambassadors, and sponsors, for a recent match, and the reaction is really fantastic. If you think of the cost of 4 bottles of beer and some nice glassware is not excessive, but the impact that has, and the positive impact that has for our clients, and also continues to engage the Magners brand. Ultimately, they want to get people having a beverage and enjoying it, and that allows us to deliver, again, something that we would not have done if the fans were in the stadium. Another event which was triggered by a recent partnership with Adidas. Adidas came to us and said, look, we're considering giving away a whole pile of kit. We want, and we understand that there's some real challenges for grassroots football at the moment, both in terms of just participation and fundraising and the costs. So we worked with Adidas to produce an event which was rolled out by Celtic here in Glasgow through our charitable foundation, the Celtic FC Foundation. where we gifted 8 local Glasgow teams with full kits and training wear in the last couple of weeks. And that was then pushed on where Adidas rolled out that across Europe, and they're going to give away 150,000 kits, over 10,000 kits into the UK. So again, just something that, wouldn't happen if it wasn't for COVID. A brand that, is really aligned to the grassroots of football in Adidas, not just aligning with massive clubs like ourselves, but giving back to the community, working through the foundation, and has a really positive impact and fantastic feedback from the clubs that we're lucky enough to get gifted and the kits that the foundation gave out, but also all the clubs across Scotland that can now apply and free to enter to try and win a set of kit for their club. Again, something that probably wouldn't have happened in alternative times. So I guess to kind of surmise, if you look at your classic partnership, your classic structure, you're going to have a list of rights. Those rights will be brand awareness. Those rights will be, access to IP, and there'll be hospitality, events, engagement, player appearances, and the coverage that you get on TV. So where we are now is we lost 4 home games at the back end of last season. We now have more games than ever on TV. So our sponsors are quite happy with that. They're getting that extra coverage from the games that are broadcast on TV. And where we struggle to deliver around hospitality, that can always be done at a later date when hopefully fans come back to the stadium and we can catch up and honour those obligations to our sponsors. But beyond that, we have enough content, we have enough access to the players that we can create really engaging events. And one that's I think live now or is about to go live is for Celtic Compare, which is a life insurance partner. Originally they had looked at kind of hospitality or maybe a visit to the training ground. We've now just reshaped that and restructured it so the winner will have a competition running for a kid to be able to do a Q&A question with the captain, Scott Brown. And again, we can get signed merchandise and everything else done in that way. So in terms of where we're at, the challenges were significant around COVID, and the challenges were difficult. But when you work closely with your partners, when you understand that they were facing the same challenges, you have a good relationship, you can work together to come up with solutions and either postpone certain activities within the contract or reshape them. And that's how that's how my team have approached the last kind of 6 months of the global pandemic. That's it, Gordon. That's my overview. So if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to take them.
Brilliant, Gordon. Well, I'll throw a couple of questions at you if you don't mind just now. Obviously, at Parkhead, I've been involved in the Special Olympics in 2005, which Celtic Parkhead basically hosted. A great event for the launch of the 2005 Special Olympics. And you've also carried out, you've said you've got an events team there, but you've carried out quite a few music events. I suppose this is a simple question, but you're very precious about the ground, obviously, unlike, for example, clubs like Kilmarnock, who have synthetic grounds, who can host music events. What other types of things do you think you're going to be able to shape to bring in different types of events with sponsors, taking it away from the football side, not talking about the actual game on the park, but is there any prospects in the next year to 2 years when we come out of COVID for you there?
Yeah, I think look, the club could always revisit the idea of having concerts on the pitch. I think we spent over £1 million on a hybrid pitch, so the groundsman is very protective. I'm fairly sure he may have a sniper stationed if you go there during the week and try and walk onto the pitch when you're not meant to. And the work that the guys do, I'm in and out of the stadium, they're there every day of the week and working and treating, because, if we look outside, it's 10 to 5 and it's pitch black. So not a lot of sunshine in Glasgow at times. And there's a real challenge around, keeping a pitch to the standard that is needed for Celtic Football Club. In the past and, before COVID, we had some, we had a fortnight event at the stadium. We were looking at esports events in and around the stadium, which have obviously been pushed back because of COVID, but I'm sure they will come back again. I would love the club to look at concerts again, because it is a fantastic venue, a fantastic facility. Unfortunately, not just the pitch, but also the time frame in which qualification for, you know, our guys can finish up towards the end of May, and they can be back in fairly early for European games. You know, the success in Europe recently will help that in the coming years, where we have less qualifiers, which will create a bigger window and less excuse for our groundsmen to say we can't get on the pitch. But look, absolutely, there's a fantastic facility there from Celtic Park Events. So hopefully we'll get back to hosting weddings, hosting conferences, and developing that events business even further. There was, again, prior to COVID, there was planning permission in for a hotel. There's planning permission in for a museum. So there's plenty of aspiration to develop the facility and improve that. And I'm sure when we get fans back in the stadium and business stabilizes, that will be very much on the agenda for the club again.
And my last question to you, obviously we'll hopefully get some more questions at the end, but stadium sponsorship's quite a big thing, but Scotland seems to be lacking in it, obviously. What's your view on stadium sponsorship? Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a very personal thing, and I think people will have a different view. Obviously, the market is extremely mature in the US in terms of actual stadium naming rights. In terms of Celtic and Celtic Park, I think there's an opportunity there for naming rights. Whether or not the club would go down that route is a question for people above my pay grade. But I think it's a good thing. I think it creates a much needed revenue for sports organizations. I think it can be extremely valuable to the community if you get the right brand. If you look at some of the financial companies that invest in naming rights, you know, it's not just about calling a stadium the Allianz Arena, you know, or the Friends Arena. It's about that brand awareness, but they're also trying to engage with the community. So I think if we found the right brand and to invest the right amount of money in a way that had a positive impact on the community, then, you know, naming rights for any stadium should be considered by any club, and whether that would be Celtic, Man United, Liverpool. I think there's definitely a tipping point when you say, well, actually, this is going to be worthwhile. And what that looks like for Celtic is not my call, and whether it'll ever be on the agenda, I'm not quite sure. But I think it's something that should always be considered, especially if it can have a massive impact in terms of the investment that we can do in terms of the playing squad and the facilities at Celtic Park.
Great, Gordon. Thanks very much for that presentation. It brings me on now. Gordon, if you'd like to stick around till the end, just in case there's any questions from the audience.
I'll stick around. I'll knock my video off.
Great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring in Alex Smith from Clipper Ventures PLC. Alex is the commercial director for Clipper Ventures, probably one of the world's most successful yacht racing companies. We've been involved with Clipper Ventures for many, many years. Glasgow has had a highly successful Clipper, and all of the business that's been gained by being involved in Clipper has been quite phenomenal for companies like Gordon and MacPhail, Radio Clyde, and many, many other, CCN, the television company, and so forth and so on. But it has many aspects to it, and we hope that Alex will be able to explain a little bit about the product, and then tell you a little bit about some of the sponsorship initiatives they've taken and the difficulties that running around the world yacht race, which visits ports throughout the world in this world pandemic, and the difficulties she's faced, or Clipper Ventures have faced over this period. So welcome, Alex.
Well, thank you ever so much, Gordon. I will also attempt to share a screen, so do let me know how that goes. There we go. I believe I also need to share my sound with you as well.
Got the screen anyway.
Fantastic. Well, thank you ever so much for that introduction. Firstly, yeah, I will set the scene for what the Clipper race is. So with no previous sailing experience necessary, it is an 11-month race around the world on 70-foot ocean racing yachts for a crew of more than 700 everyday heroes. It is, as you said, the brainchild of Sir Robert Knox-Johnston and William Ward, and the 12th edition started in summer 2019. The race is divided into 8 legs, and then there's 16 races within those, and crew can choose to do a full navigation or compete in individual legs, in individual legs. The current race will host up to 44 nationalities, so we connect with individuals and communities all around the globe, and we welcome everyone over the age of 18, all ethnicities, genders, religious beliefs, political beliefs. They come to Clipper Race. In Gosport, they go through an intense 4-week training course, and then they get to take part in one of the world's biggest adventures, and definitely a big experience. The 2019-20 race started in London in August, and we travelled then onwards to Portimao in Portugal, to Punta del Este in Uruguay, Cape Town in South Africa, to Fremantle and the Whitsundays in Australia, and then travelled onwards up to the Philippines. Unfortunately, COVID-19 slightly derailed our plans at that point to move onwards to China and then cross the North Pacific before going through the Panama Canal and back over the Atlantic. So we've had to postpone the current edition, but we are restarting the race in August 2021, and we'll be heading to those stopovers and completing that journey with our partners and with our crew. So something that we are absolutely looking forward to. It has, of course, led to significant challenges, and we've had to look at what we do and how we keep our relationships with our partners over the full edition of this race now. Just to give some background, the partnerships are split into some tiers. We have host port partners, which is the destinations that we visit, the team partners, which take the full branding of the boats, the naming rights. We have fleet partners, which are in this race Musto and Dell. And then we also have supplier partnerships as well within the race. So that's often the tech and the kit that the crew and the skippers use while they're on board. So spin lock life jackets, stay lock for the rigging, Marlow for the ropes, and on and on. As it says on the slide, there are 736 human stories to tell, and that storytelling is absolutely vital to what we do. Our media agency, 1080, were recently nominated for the video that I'm about to show you. Called Ocean Emotion. It's only a few minutes long, and I think it shows a little of what life on board a Clipper 70 is like. I'm hoping that the sound works. The music is very calming, however the content is a little less so. So I will try and play that, and let's see how we go. Brilliant. So we are an offshore racing event, which means that while we host events in port up to 250,000 spectators, as you saw from the video, a lot of the action is played out in the middle of the world's oceans. This means we have always had the opportunity to be incredibly creative in how we deliver and return value to our partners, effectively when the event is out of sight. And we've done this in a variety of ways over the times of the race and all the editions that we've held. As the crews on the race are everyday heroes, there is an option for partners to take crew places on the boat and to use for engagement with staff, for social impact programs, even for competition places, and to get people to really experience what it is that they're talking about and feed that back into workplaces. The skills learned on board include teamwork, conflict resolution, communication, and are often, as I say, relayed back into those work environments as real world examples. On the last leg of the race, we had a gentleman who is a managing director of an insurance company in London, who used his time in the race to further understand real world risk and decision making, and then fed that back in and presented it to his teams to show how the theoretical lessons that they were talking about were then filled, sort of sent back and showed them videos of what he'd experienced while he was racing. Many conversations recently have, of course, been based around the world we live in and our responsibility to it. The ocean is both our workplace and also our playground, and we have a fleet of people who are passionate about their environment. And this has opened up opportunities to complete science citizen projects and to really, particularly in future conversations we're having, relate back to partners' environment goals in a really tangible way, where they can get people on board really taking part in what it is that they're trying to understand. Fundamental to all of the conversations that we have with partners is the understanding of what a successful campaign will look like before they even start, which helps when we get to sort of bumps in the road like we've had with COVID-19. A great example of this is our relationship with Dell, who provide the rugged tech on board. Initially, they were, fundamentally looking for media return on the partnership. However, what it turned out is the true value for them was the storytelling to their potential and current clients of seeing how their tech, the rugged tech, was used on board, being the center point to everything that goes on, all of the weather, the safety, the communication in and out of the boat for people to keep in contact with families, to tell their stories, all goes through this rugged tech, and it's being used in these hot, salty, wet, humid, sort of cold environments. And it's not just making it across oceans, but it's making it the whole way around the world and taking a bit of a hammering and still, performing as it should. So it's fantastic to showcase what their products can do, but also to tell the stories behind with the adventure and the experience and the teamwork behind it. Again, as Gordon will tell you, with Glasgow as a destination sponsor, the campaign was focused on business and government interaction and showcasing Glasgow around the world. And despite the fleet not heading to the city, I think it was an incredibly successful campaign for Glasgow. Of course, while the race is postponed, we, like all events, have had to pivot and continue to offer that return for partners and across this extended edition. We're really fortunate in the way that it's staged, the Clipper race. So obviously we race for 11 months and it's full on from the moment, or before the boats even leave the dock, up until the very finish of the race. It's 24/7. There are no off moments. They're either racing or they're in ports and we're creating content. And it's that real solid 11 months of this really interesting storytelling. However, we also have 13 months in between events where we are used to continuing to deliver for partners. So we're used to having to sort of revisit content and find these creative ways to do that. And we, that's what we've done. We've pivoted and tried to be smarter with what we're doing. Crew are absolutely at the heart of the race and everything we do. Our content comes from a myriad of places. The crew and the skippers create blogs, films. We get images which are sent back from the boats daily. We also have onboard reporters capturing moments and stories on board. And the relationship between our partners and our crew is incredibly strong. There's an awful lot of loyalty there. The supplier partnerships tend to involve the kit and the tech that they wear and they use every day. So as I said, spin up the life jackets, AST for our satellite communications, Marlow for the Lions. And there is a particular wonderful kind of loyalty that the crew and the skippers have with their team partners' yacht that they sail on and the destinations that they visit. It becomes fundamental to their experience and very special to them. And we work with the crew, with our incredible comms team and our partnership team, setting in the groundwork at the very beginning to educate the crew on who the partnerships are with and why we have them, so that they can go out and be ambassadors for those brands when they're speaking to press, when they're writing stories, when they're doing their blogs, when they're just generally sharing their experience of being part of the race. And what it does is lead to a lot of authentic and sort of organic content that we can use, and then our comms team can curate into these incredible stories. With the additional time that we've had with the pandemic, it has given us an opportunity to really go back and to some of those stories and pick through them. And as I mentioned, the race is constant, so there is so much stuff coming back off the boats that we have all this sort of gold mine of things that we can use and relate and create those stories back to keep that going while we're sort of on this slight downturn. Many of our partners have ambassadors within the crew. And throughout the run up to the race and the stopovers, they produce really special and specific content that the partner is looking for. And that has continued during the lockdown as well. So we've had, they've continued to engage with the partners. They've gone on webinars, talked about experience, and really sort of kept those relationships going and talking about the experiences and the lessons they've learned within the race. Down to online learning and education. We host sport partners in China, work closely with the CYA, the Chinese Yachting Association, and some of the ambassadors went and did some really practical how to sail webinars, how to helm, how to tie a bowline, and got that filmed and had it sent out, because obviously online learning during lockdown, absolutely soared. So it's something fantastic that we could put our little piece and still keep those relationships and those conversations going. In terms of our host port destinations, as I say, the comms team did an incredible job of visiting those destinations as we were meant to be there, and really showcasing what there is to look forward to and what was there, and telling those stories for the destinations and putting it out there into sort of across our audience. Our partners have many audiences that they're looking to connect with, but often, particularly with our supplier partnerships, so for example, for Marlow Ropes, a lot of the communications that they've personally been doing over the lockdown is to do with their sustainability, with their environmentally friendly dock line, which we use on the boats. Copper Coat is the anti-foul that is currently being on the bottom of our boats and a partner of ours, and it's currently really being put to test in the Philippines while the boats are over there. So again, we can create stories, we can create content, we can revisit, and just to keep that relationship going. And also highlighting what else is going on in the world in terms of sporting events. So, for us all to come back and to be where we want to be, the entire industry has to be buoyed. So supporting the Formula One when it was in Portimao, which was our destination straight after London, fantastic place, and obviously they held the Formula One there, so it was great to talk about that. We have an amazing wine partner, Garzon, who celebrated our Arena Day in Uruguay, so we had the opportunity to revisit when the crew went and did a wine tasting, which, wine and boats isn't something that normally goes together, unfortunately for us. They're very dry, but it's nice to sort of revisit those little moments that people got to experience. And as well as the other events, obviously we had the Vendée Globe set sail on Sunday, and Alex Thompson, who's sailing on Hugo Boss, is an ex-Clipper race skipper. He's a real fantastic and a real amazing legacy piece for what the race has produced in terms of skippers. And so Robin was on his boat going to wave him off. So it's fantastic to support him and the Vendée Globe with that. I think for us as an event, as it is for everyone at the moment, it is still a bit of a learning curve. We're still learning how to do it and how to do it really effectively and to get the most out of it. But we are really looking forward to getting the crew back on board the boat and completing one of the crazier circumnavigations that we have done. and you know, continue to gain the content, the stories, to get people back on board. But for the moment, I think it's been really fundamental for us to be smart, be creative, and be communicative with our audience, with our partners, and move forward with that. So I hope that answered a little bit of the questions of what we've been doing, Gordon.
Thank you, Alex. That's really useful to hear Clipper Ventures, and I hope that's invigorated quite a few people to even consider. You know, you can contact Alex and put your name down for doing a leg on it, because you certainly won't come back the same person that you left. But having had experience of Clipper, I know what a powerful business to business product it is. It's almost as though sailing is just the excuse to get in the middle of it sometimes, but you have so many platforms that I know that, for example, Gordon MacPhail and Elgin certainly did exceptionally well for their initial investment in sponsorship of you, and had over a 400 times return for their money way back when I was involved at that early stages. One question for you: you have 700 ambassadors. People pay to go on your boat, so they pay to do exactly what you showed on the video. They pay to get hit in the face with a fire hose for 24 hours and get soaked to the skin, and potentially fall overboard and get dragged along by the boat and go through all the risks that we don't necessarily get in the city. How important are these ambassadors, and can these ambassadors go out individually to get sponsorship, to maybe fund your, to pay if they want to do 10 months or they want to do one leg? How can they go out and find a sponsor, and how would that fit with you, with Musto and Dell and all your other brands?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, some crew do go out and get sponsorship. So, for example, the insurance one that I mentioned there was a gentleman whose company, he'd paid for one leg, and his deal with the company was that he would get unpaid leave for the second part for another leg that he was doing, and they would pay him, that they would sponsor him the money to do that second leg. So that was his return for them on that was writing a report on risk management in real world scenarios and then reporting that back. So absolutely, that is, and we supported him with that as well. We have some quite clear instructions what can be. Obviously, we have very solid rules about sponsors sort of clashing and things like that, and exclusivity, but it's absolutely possible. And I think, as you said, the B2B side is absolutely the crew are the heart of the race. I think the B2B side of it is kind of, it's not the customer facing side, obviously, but there is so much that goes on. You know, the governments that we have involved, the businesses that we have involved, so much happens shoreside in terms of the networking and the connections. And I was going to show one of the videos of our partners. Unfortunately, it's a little bit too long, and I didn't want to keep everyone watching a sort of 4.5 minute video. But we give businesses the opportunity to go to destinations they wouldn't necessarily or have the opportunity to go to, and we give them the context of conversation for why they're there. And it's an amazing icebreaker to get involved with people. And we've had such fantastic success with Glasgow, with a lot of logistics partners, entering into entirely new markets and things like that. So as I say, as the crew are the heart of the race, but the business is really, what gets it going.
The other thing to do with sponsorship, you've now become very much an international company, whereas probably when you started, you were very much a GB-based sailing organisation. But now you're very international. You've moved down into the other side of the globe, down to Australia. So you've set up a base down there. But more significantly, just recently, you've started and set up a base over in China, recognising that as being in the emerging markets. And that is potentially, has that the opportunity to become bigger than anything else that you've created this side of the world?
Yeah, well, the aim is always to go bigger, brighter and bolder. I mean, China is obviously an incredible market, and when they do things, they don't necessarily do it by halves. So we've had some fantastic long-term relationships with Qingdao. Obviously, Sanya and Zhuhai are also stopovers on this race, and they're just incredible partnerships. And we've always had such amazing stopovers. But again, they've also really got to grips with this the business side of what we do. And, you know, they always send people to all of our stopovers to have those conversations, to, you know, create that return for them that they're looking. They're very sure of what it is that they want to do. And, you know, it's been brilliant being able to be part of that. But yeah, absolutely. China is as I say, it does nothing by halves.
Thanks very much, Alex. That's been very interesting hearing all about Clipper Ventures and the Clipper race. And the best of luck when you restart. I think it's August. You're restarting in the Philippines. Your 12 boats will be taking off and finishing off the route, and then you'll be moving on to another schedule. So if MD's looking on, you've still got plenty of time to participate, either from a business perspective or from an individual perspective, wanting to join the cruise. It brings me on, I'm going to open it out now, and if Alice, if you wouldn't mind trying to open this out to questions, and we have got a question here which I'm going to open out from Alice Senior. Now, I don't know if Alice is still on. Alice Senior, you had a specific question for Luca, Alice. So if you're online, if not, I'll be able to read it out. So Alice Senior, if you could unmute your mic and throw your question into the pot.
Hi, Gordon. Hopefully you can hear me.
I can, Luca. Can Alice? Nice to hear from you.
So yeah, I've got a question for Luca. Yeah, I really enjoyed learning about the Foiling Week, about what he was saying. So yeah, my sailing team are currently campaigning to compete at the Youth Foiling World Cup, which Luca probably is aware of the event. But we're really struggling to gain sponsorship at the moment, and we have a very tight deadline for the entry payment. So I was just wondering if he had any specific advice for me and our team. And, you know, what can potential sponsors benefit from by sponsoring us at this event?
Alice, thank you for the question. Yes, I'm aware of the World Youth Foiling Championship. Actually, is one of the events we are partnering with as Foiling Week. So we provide all the forum for the event. Back to your question, if I remember correctly, the entry fee is, I don't remember the exact number, but I think it's in the range of a few £1,000. I understand that there is an overall budget, of course, that you will need to cover to get there. But if it's about the entry fee and the number is that small, I understand you're from the UK, I would go to marine businesses that are associated with foiling, trying, like Marlow Ropes, Masto, suppliers that can help you with this kind of finance, because I think it seems doable from the size of it. And it's the first World Youth Sailing Championship, which is going to be basically done. It's basically the Youth America's Cup with a different name in a different location because they couldn't run it in New Zealand. So I think that's going to get plenty of attention. So I think you have some opportunity there.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I hope this helps. I hope this helps.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. I'm just wondering more specifically, how do you think sponsors can benefit from sponsoring at this event? Because there'll be a lack of spectators there. Do you have any ideas on, you know, how they'll benefit from this?
Well, I wouldn't focus on local spectators like the Youth America's Cup or the America's Cup. They certainly have an impact on locals, but it's all about the media and the distribution. So if the Youth World Foiling organization has done a good work in terms of media distribution on TV channels and socials, then you will have something that you can sell to sponsors in terms of space. Even though, or especially because it's one of the few events that is going to happen in COVID times, which means there is going to be an audience because most of the rest is going to be quiet. We have seen that with the Persico 16.5 Cup this year. Certainly one reason of the success was that it was a new boat launched with a number of events run in Italy, but certainly an element of success was the fact that no one else was happening at the same time. So I gave that series a huge benefit in terms of being the only one running. And one last thing, if I can, I'm happy to help on our socials. If you send me a quick presentation, something we can post with a picture, I'm happy to share that on Foiling Week website and Foiling Week socials, if that can help in any way.
That's great. Thank you very much, Luca.
Alice, if I can just chip in here, I know absolutely nothing about sailing whatsoever. But if I was entering a team into a sailing race, and I was a young lady, and I was trying to get some fundraising, I think I'd look to myself and to my teammates. I'd say, I don't even know if you have a crew or if you're on your own. And I'd go and sell my story. I'd go and talk about who I am, what I'm trying to achieve, who my teammates are, what they are going to achieve. What is your demographic? Do you have 1,000 friends on Facebook? Do you have 200 friends on Instagram? Do you have 5 friends? Talk about you, talk about your teammates, understand what your world is and who wants to get into that world. Maybe it's not even a sailing product. Maybe it's a fashion brand. Maybe it's a sunscreen brand that you need to protect yourself when you're on the water. So really look beyond just your core product. Look to yourself, look to your teammates and what you can bring to a potential brand and formulate a story around that. Alex spoke earlier on about the power of a story. And I think if you can package that up in some way, you'll have something more compelling than, would you like to sponsor my sailing team? Give them something more creative. That's me.
Yeah, I think I was going to say, yeah, I absolutely agree with everything that Luca and Gordon have said, but understanding what it is that you can give back to the sponsor rather than what it is that you need from them is a really good place to start from when you go in and have those conversations. So get to know who it is you want to speak to and research what it is that they've done before you start going too far down the line, because it is really hard to get sponsorship for anything, and you don't want to burn too many bridges. So if you really know who it is you need to speak to, what they've looked at before, do some research and what it is you think you can give to them before you figure out what it is you want from them, would be my suggestion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gordon and Alex, on your comments. I'll definitely take it on board and try and create what you said as like a story about myself and our team to reach out to potential sponsors and get to know them as well.
Thanks very much, guys, for the answer. Alice, I hope that's given you a little bit of enthusiasm to go out there. I would qualify that and summarise it all by saying what you've got to think about from a sponsorship perspective is that you've got to be thinking from the outside in. So you've really got to come up with a story to create some value. Value comes before you ask about the sponsorship. You've got to provide value in yourself, your team, your sport, where you plan to be, a vision that you can share with your potential sponsor and then get them excited about it. And also from a business perspective, show what you can return to them. So you've heard Luca, Alex and Gordon talk about the relationships they've had at Celtic Park with a player meeting and being videoed and put out there. You've got to think about the story you can tell in partnership with your potential sponsor. And you will get sponsorship if you take that approach. But again, on the back of what Luca's saying, he'll share it. Certainly, if you want to make contact with us here at GRM, I think you already have sent me an email. We'd be delighted to give you a little bit of help in shaping what you're trying to get.
Thank you, Gordon. Yes, I did send you an email. I think it was yesterday. So I'll try and get in touch again and have a bit of a discussion with you. That would be great.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alice, for the question.
Thank you.
I do have a couple of questions here, which I'm going to start again. I'll probably start with I'll start with Alex first of all, and then I'll ask Gordon to come in, and then Luca potentially. So, are online events as successful as offline events?
Oh, I mean, you've got to figure out how you measure the success of what it is you're doing, I guess, to answer that question. I think they can be, and I think understanding where people are going in the future, I think it's really interesting to look at some of the sports which are, really innovating with this. Like, for example, Extreme E, when they start racing, when they start their event, they aren't going to have any spectators at all, ever. Everything is going to be done remotely, all remote hospitality, remote spectatorship. And so I think there's definitely a vision and a possibility for making something successful and exciting when you do that. I think I intrinsically believe, and I think COVID has proved that the gathering of humans is really fundamental for humans. We want to gather. I think that's probably one of the biggest social issues that we've all had with COVID is we just miss people. I know I certainly do, and a lot of people I've spoken to do. And I think there will never stop being that gathering of people or want to do that. And I think something special comes from that. And I don't think we realized how special it was until we had it taken away from us. You know, music events, sports events, all create something. But I don't think that means that we shouldn't be brave and innovative in how we present what it is we do online.
Thanks. Gordon.
I think I'd echo Alex's sentiments about the human side of things. I'm probably one of the privileged people that gets to attend major sporting events at the moment because of my job. I nearly don't like it. I shouldn't say that because there's hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people who would like to be in my position, but it actually makes me a little bit sad when I sit in Celtic Park and I'm not surrounded by 59,000 other people. You really sense the loss of the fans and how important they are to sport. But to your question around our online events, I believe they're easier to measure and manage in terms of a return on investment for sponsorship. So there are plenty of analytical tools which can tell you and can help you if you're either buying or selling media place on online events, the number of eyeballs, the frequency of the brand exposure is, and it's a lot cheaper than measuring the metrics on TV. So there are huge benefits from that point of view in terms of understanding the return on investment around sponsorship for online events, and they can be hugely successful. They also reach an audience not just in a moment in time. If you want to go and enjoy our 9 in a row celebration on YouTube now, on the 11th of the 11th, you can go and watch it and you can see what it was like. You can potentially in 10 years time go back and show your kids what it was like to have that celebration. So huge advantages of online events, which I don't think we'll truly understand for a period of time. Valuation is a lot easier than maybe the live game. But for me, that authentic experience, sipping a beer, celebrating a victory, having a hot dog, crying, with the sadness of it all, just creates a different level of bond to the experience. And essentially the brands that you're surrounded by, either consciously or subconsciously, are being absorbed into that experience. And that's why companies pay so much money for sponsorship events. And I don't think you can replicate that live experience in an online environment.
Luca.
Well, I agree with Gordon and Alex. I honestly think some events are more easier than others to go online. But sailing certainly is not, and it's a sport made to connect man and nature, and events are made to connect people to these men that are together with nature. And I think it is just impossible to think of a foiling week purely online. We can make some compromise at the moment because of the COVID situation, and on the other side, we can certainly think of it as an accelerating opportunity to drive more focus on a broader, let's say, on a broader human population than what we normally get at the events and on the normal TV and online. But that said, events will need to go back to where they are. And hopefully these Pfizer vaccine and everything will sort the situation in a year or two max, and we can go back to where we were.
Thanks, Luca. I have a question here from Chris Newlands, which I'll go through and ask each of you to give me an answer on this. So Chris's question, Chris, have you got your mic off? Would you like to ask the question yourself, or I've got it here?
Yeah, happy to do so, Gordon. I really enjoyed all the various examples that you gave. Some fantastic examples, in fact, ones I was not aware of actually, which is quite interesting too. But fundamentally, I've probably interviewed all of the English Premier League chief marketing officers in the last 5-6 months or so, a few in the Bundesliga and a few in Serie A too. And their concern was the short and mid-term impact on sponsorship revenue. And about how they could add value to obviously the sponsors themselves. And I think Gordon gives some great examples of how they've done that at Celtic. Alex, I think the sponsorship aspect of things was fantastic too. But fundamentally, the issue, I think there's an unintended benefit potentially through COVID about the ability to engage with remote fans who can never fit into a stadium. And actually, if we can capture this, the lightning in the bottle, if you like, I think there's something spectacular that we can do now that can actually help for the future too. So I suppose the question really is, how do you plan to engage with the fans who can never be at your stadium or your actual events because of the sheer scale of the interest? And how can we actually add value now to the sponsors to not only maintain and retain the sponsorship income, but actually increase it potentially too?
Okay, so I think everything you touched on is accurate. There are significant opportunities around wider fan engagement. I think it comes back again to the amount of content that has now been produced, the amount of games, particularly in the SPFL, broadcast deals with the US, enhanced broadcast deals in Asia as well are going to help in terms of deliver both the SPFL and Celtic brand and all clubs on a bigger scale. We are actively, without going into too much sensitive stuff, we are actively looking at a number of different solutions focused on fan engagement in a digital way. In being able to bring specific content to fans who want it, who acquire it in different ways. And we'll launch in the next couple of weeks a communication platform, which is going to be, I think, a first in terms of football. So, we are, I guess, trying to be as dynamic as possible in looking at how we're going to engage with fans in the future. I think membership schemes are becoming very popular across football clubs, international membership schemes, and this is going beyond the old school. And Chris, I'm sure, I'm going to guess from the tone of your voice, you're over 20 years of age. So, the old school membership where you pay, £30 and you get a scarf and a pin badge and a little card that does nothing. Yes. those old school memberships can really evolve now because we can get access to players in a different way. We can create content in a different way. And so again, regardless of which sport it is, it's looking at what do you have, what are the assets that are around you, what are the assets that have been created because of COVID, and how can you deliver that to a fan base which is evolving and changing, not just because of COVID, but because of the way content is consumed. I always think of my 9-year-old who, I fear I could get knocked off this at any minute because he's currently
Good timing.
I think that was self-fulfilling prophecy there. Chris, I'm sorry, I think Gordon's muted, but while Gordon's waiting, I'd say the one thing that we realise, we have always had really good reactions with our race viewer that's online. Yep. So obviously our boats are never within sight, before coming in and out of port. So we have people track the fleet as they race, and people get incredibly involved. And we've been looking a lot, as I say, pivoted to what we can do to up our game on that as well, because it's probably the biggest hit that we get on our website, and people become completely addicted to it, a lot of our audience. So sort of trying to grow and build that out. Sorry, Gordon, I'll pass back to you now. You disappeared. As you said you were going to disappear, you did.
I was about to say I do constantly worry because my son is streaming on his Xbox while running TikToks, and I'm highly likely to get knocked off. And then I could see no one else's face was moving. I didn't even get a smile from my little joke, so I sensed I was gone. I still kept talking just in case you could hear me. So But yeah, the way kids and the way consumers are taking in content now, short, sharp bursts, has evolved and has changed. And I think that's something that all football clubs and all sports organizations have to be extremely cognizant of. I know it's hard to get a 9 and a 10-year-old to sit down and watch a 90-minute football game. So we have to make sure that we're delivering content in a way that is, timely to them, of interest to them, and will keep them engaged in their brand for when they get hopefully that little bit older and more engaged in the sport and can sit through 90 minutes of football. I know I could do it when I was 9 years of age, but that's because I didn't have the distractions of TikTok and Snapchat and all these kind of digital games. I think young kids' minds now are just hungry for lots of content very quickly and relevant to them. And all sports, I think, struggle with that, and it's something that is going to be a challenge. And there's probably a whole other conference for Gordon and the guys at FIA to consider. Gordon, you were on mute.
Sorry, Luca. If I could pass that question on to you, if you could look at it from Chris's question.
Well, we are the smaller event here compared to Clipper and what Gordon is representing. So certainly we have a lot of work to do anyway to reach a wider audience. And as I mentioned in just a few minutes ago, I take this COVID situation as an opportunity to widen our base anyway. It's what we were meant to do. Certainly it would have been better in different circumstances, but that's what we have to do now. So we'll work towards getting more fan engagement from far away. But we still have to consider that our purpose as Foiling Week is really to get more people into the sport. So certainly we need to work a lot into getting people to come to the event and to try foiling in person. And we probably have a different task compared to Alex and Gordon in general.
I would agree. I think experiential is really key, to be honest. And the more you can add something to the experience for the fan, the more they're going to engage. And Alex, your point about following over the horizon. I was here when the Clippers came to Greenock many years ago, and there was a funeral a few years later, and they talked about the ships going over the horizon, and you knew they're still there, but actually know that they're not. You can't see them, sort of thing. So it was a really nice alignment as such. So I think the technology obviously makes it more experiential. But thank you for that. I just thought I'd ask the question. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Chris. That was a good question. I do have. I'm wanting to very conscious just now. It's 20 to 6, and I want to finish before 6 o'clock. So I'm gonna ask that. There's one other question I'd like to ask here, which just came in on my mobile. Do you think we're going to be able to? And this is probably more for Gordon, but do you think we're going to be able to have events, and when do you think the restrictions? I suppose this is a little bit of a stick your finger in the air. Are stadiums going to fill up quickly? Are you've got a 60,000 seater stadium there at Parkhead. And you talked about getting 59,500 people in there at the last game. Are 59,500 people going to come back right away, or is it going to be a fear factor? Is it going to be a quick build, or is it going to be how is it going to look to you, Gordon? What do you feel after COVID, when we begin to see people coming back? Is there too much of a fear factor out there for people to get out into the Clipper race or into the Foiling Week or back into Celtic Park?
Apologies, I think, am I back again?
Yep, Gordon, yeah.
The question was when are we going to be back in the stadiums?
Well, when it's time to go back, do you think there's going to be a reluctance to come out and be sitting right on top of somebody in the stadium, or right next to somebody? Do you think there's a fear factor there?
Well, I think we have completed a fan survey over the last, I think it's probably 4 weeks ago now since it was completed, and we went to our fans and asked our season ticket holders, look, can you let us know what your thoughts are? Are you likely to return? Are you, afraid to return? Are you physically capable of returning? To try and put a plan in place that when we do return, because I guess every indicator is that it's going to be a phased return. You might start with 300, 1,000, 5,000, and we're modeling what that looks like. And how do you tell one fan they're allowed in and another that they're not? And what are the travel arrangements? So thankfully there's a fair few people at Celtic who are a lot more intelligent than me and much better at spreadsheets. So they're working on what that is going to look like in terms of the return to football. And there are a number of different companies in the marketplace now that are looking at utilizing technology around, the flow of people, the gathering of people, how many people can be in a room based on how many mobile phones are connected to your Wi-Fi network. So there's a whole, industry sparking up around the COVID, how you return people, temperature checking, covering with kind of this mist that helps kill off the germs, and self-reporting. So I'm not sure what it's going to look like. I
think we've lost Gordon. Has he frozen? Yeah, can you hear me all right? Yeah, I think Gordon's probably frozen with broadband. So yeah, I suppose bringing it on, maybe Alex, to you. I mean, there's quite a big. Hi, Chris. If you wouldn't mind muting yourself, that would be okay, Chris. Just that might be part of the solution. Alex, the quick question to you is: people don't do the Clipper race because they want to be safe. That's they're not chess players. So in many ways, the fear element, does it apply to you?
I think what I'll say is, in terms of the safety on board and everything that we do, is it's all managed risk. So yes, people are out there in real world environments and they're sailing in Mother Nature, who has no idea if they're consummate professionals to be doing it with their life or not. But everything we provide them and everything we do on the boat, or the training, the kit that they wear, the life jackets, everything is there to keep them safe. And I think that's probably our view as well moving forward with COVID. I am probably a little bit overly optimistic that that we will have a vaccine program that will be useful and good. I was mentioning to you before we start all this, I'm part of the trials to see how COVID is spreading. So I get a woman turn up on my doorstep every week and swab my entire family for COVID testing, and that comes back so that Oxford can track COVID. And I'm adamant that we will have a vaccine that is sent out and delivered globally that will protect those that need to be protected. So I think that we can move forward and we can do activities without having all had the vaccine in the future. But we just have to make sure that we are as COVID safe as possible. And that's going to be bringing in new protocols, new things. But I don't think it's an impossibility. I don't think it's insurmountable.
And Luca, I suppose from your perspective and having familiarity with the event that you ran over in Lake Garda, you tend to find that most of the boats, for example, the Moth, which is probably one of the fastest small boats in the world, the Moth racing system is single-handed, so there's very little danger there. But how are you going to run your evening events, your awards dinners, your the awards dinners that we were at in Milan, where I probably caught COVID-19, to be really honest with you, in February when I was there. But how are you going to manage that aspect of it? I mean, you're living in a sport where people do want to take risks. Again, they're not racing these boats at 45 knots, so they don't get hurt. But it's all about risk management.
I think we have to differentiate between taking a personal risk and taking a risk for the rest of the society. One thing is on your own to decide that you want to go on a boat on 40 knots, and another is to meet 200 people in a room where just by traveling there, going there, you can get COVID and then you can take it back to someone else that didn't really want that. So for us, we will run evening events, awards, and these kind of things only if there is, I wouldn't say zero risk because that's impossible, but a very, very limited risk, like a no lockdown, everything open, and a general situation that is okay. Otherwise, we'll just keep it, it's okay. I'm not going to run an awards night online. I'd rather wait for the situation to be free and till we can meet at the first available situation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's became abundantly clear from all of your answers that bums on seats or boots on the ground are where events lie, and interaction is better. I think to summarise really the questions there that have been raised today, I think even Chris's question about, you know, and I think Chris, you probably got a very good product that would fit with the types of events that all three of our panelists have raised, and I think we'd like to hear a little bit more about that later on offline. I'd like to thank young Alice, who's asked a question about sponsorship. Best of luck. Please keep in touch with us. But most of all, I'd like to thank our sponsor of this, because these events are all free of charge. But by being free, we have a sponsor who has sponsored the cost of setting all this up and changing from a bums on seats conference, which took place last year. We hope to get back to bums on seats next year, but we just have to wait and see. Thanks to QTS for sponsorship. My panelists, Gordon Kaye from Celtic, Alex Smith from Clipper Ventures, and Luca Rizzotti from Foiling Week and Persico. I'd like to thank you all very much indeed for giving us a really interesting evening, and hopefully you can join us again. Our final webinar, webinar 4, takes place next week, and you know, we've got some very interesting panelists there. So we've got international panelists, and we've also got Mel Young, the chairman of Sport Scotland, who's going to be on there as well. So I look forward to next Wednesday to another. It will be a 2-hour session right through to 6 o'clock. Please join us. If you haven't registered, register quickly. We do know that that is going to be full, and we might have some surprises lined up for you. I think today we've got Jamie Garriker's book, and I think the question, I think we're going to probably give the question to, well, I'll leave Alice Basson, my colleague, to decide who this is going to go to, and we'll make touch base with you and send you on Jamie Garriker's book, signed book. It will give you something to do during COVID-19, we hope. Thanks to my panelists very much indeed, and good night, everybody.